So I'm going to explain a new program that we're doing in partnership with the Vimsen Group, and I am coming from New Lab. I'm New Lab's Chief Product Officer. Our mining studio is effectively an innovation pipeline where we're trying to bring in startups, academic, and research talent to come and innovate in things in the mining industry, particularly in partnership with a mining company. And so we're bringing that expertise and the mining company's ability to pilot these innovations that we're bringing to the program. And I'll talk to you a little bit about why Vimsen, why New Lab, and sort of our plans over the next year. But the real goal is to help pilot and scale businesses for the mining industry, where, kind of piggybacking off some of the commentary from the other talks today is we think we have a way of really attracting great talent, the great younger generation talent, and incentivizing the right way to help build businesses that are important for mining. So who's Vimsen? Vimsen is, at this point, a large sort of Indian conglomerate. They're involved in multiple businesses in India. Probably their oldest is the mining operation. They own several iron ore mines in Goa, and they're also making investments around the world. They made a few investments in Australia recently as they try to expand their mining footprint. The story is that they've been around since about the late 60s, and they currently ship iron ore to steel manufacturers in Japan, South Korea, and China. Meeting the Vimsen Group was sort of whimsical in the sense that the youngest son, who's the director in the group, spent time in New York. He went to business school at Columbia, spent time at a hedge fund there in New York, saw sort of the tech ecosystem in the United States, the increase in venture capital happening behind technology businesses, a lot of which were being applied to US-based manufacturing industries such as automotive or aviation, and saw an opportunity that if you can point that towards mining, you could really help make a lot of change in that industry. And that's how they found us, New Lab. And so who is New Lab? We are a platform for scaling frontier technologies. We are a hub. We're home to about 150 technology startups that focus on frontier science and really try to turn great science and tech into products. So we don't have a lot of marketplace companies. We don't have sort of business innovation companies. We don't do fintech. It's just a choice that we've made to really target these types of sort of tough tech type solutions. And so that's built this really rich community that's been very interesting for our corporate partners. And so by the numbers, we have over 700 plus entrepreneurs that come to work in our building every day. Our building is an 85,000 square foot space located in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The Brooklyn Navy Yard was an epicenter of construction and building of warships in World War I, World War II for the United States. And so our building was one of the buildings that built these ships. The original rails are still in place from 1904 that carried the ships into the dry dock. And so we're actually right next to a dock in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Just like anywhere else in the world around World War I, World War II, after the war, the Brooklyn Navy Yard dipped to basically no employees from 70,000 plus, and now we're back up to about 7,000, 8,000 employees in the campus. And so this is becoming sort of a tech kind of growth area for New York, and we're one building in that campus. And so we had some great public-private partnerships to build the space to begin with. We've got a really low acceptance rate just because we're space constrained. So, of the 140 companies, imagine there are 1,000 in our database that want to come join. Market value currently for all those companies is north of 2.8 billion. Started at 400 million just 2.5, 3 years ago. We provide them lots of prototyping resources. So if you're a 3D printing company, if you're trying to build an engine, if you're trying to build a biofabrication technology, if you're trying to build a robotics technology, you can probably access the prototyping resources that we have in the building to build your first prototype or your first product. And we've had some great acquisitions already in the space, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the community and sort of what we're bringing to the table for these entrepreneurs seems to be working, and we seem to be developing benefit for the corporate partners that have joined so far. So here's just a taste of some of the startups that we have in the space, and some of these are relevant to mining. And so this is just to give you an example of the types of companies we can draw to a program that we're doing, such as this one in mining. We've got AI, machine learning companies. This one on the left, Pienso, works with text-based data. So if you're a maintenance worker in a mining and you're putting your maintenance notes in text, Pienso can build data, machine learning models without having to code. And so imagine sort of a frontline operator or manager building a model based on their expertise using the text-based data that their workers are inputting in terms of maintenance reports. Road Power Systems generates grid quality electricity on site. So large vehicles driving over this device will create energy for the grid. This is great for commercial and as well as industrial. Honeybee Robotics has been around since the 80s, developing space drilling technologies for NASA. They're now moving into the industrial space. They build automated inspection systems as well as drills and have an interest in mining. Micro PSI, control systems, deep learning driven for robots. Carmera is a 3D vision, 3D scanning data platform for self-driving vehicles. And then we have a blockchain company that's actually doing pretty well, that's developing location standards on the blockchain. So again, for mining, we think this is interesting because it's an industry that's still developing their data structures, and this is actually an interesting time to test out blockchain, and some already have. Keep going, we've got AI technologies applied to health. We've got a genomics company, and we have plenty more that want to come in and work in mining, energy harvesting companies, a couple of quantum computing companies. Pliant Energy is an interesting autonomous vehicle. This is a robot that's amphibious, so the fins allow it to swim in water at great agility, and it turns out those fins allow it to go across muddy and ice surfaces. So this is pretty interesting for mining, especially let's say in Goa, where it's very seasonal when you can have access to things on the mining site. We have a vehicle now that can track across really muddy conditions, and you put sensors on it and so on. So it's an example of the types of platforms that we have that come to New Lab that we can recruit, and they're saying, well, what's our problem? Like any other startup is, how do I get that enterprise customer? How do I get into that first pilot? And so if we talk about New Lab a little bit more, these are the values that we add, and really the prospect mining program is about the first two and the last. And so we provide a physical home for entrepreneurs. We allow them access to resources, and we bring them into our partnerships. For corporations, we can develop programs that allow them to source talent, allow them to get businesses to point their sort of power towards their problems, all for really what it is a program fee. And what the corporation is really investing in is their ability to pilot, and in some cases invest in these companies as they work on those problems. And at the end of the day, we are an investor. New Lab is an investor, and the Vimsen Group are also investors. And so we're creating deal flow as they go through the mining studio. And so there's some questions in the earlier panels about, will that startup be there when the pilot is over? In this case, New Lab has the capital to back that startup through a successful pilot and actually deliver that product to the mining client. So we're sort of taking the risk away from the mining partner in some ways, because we're willing to invest if we see traction in the program. So New Lab kind of sits in the center of all these things. For the Prospect Studio, I would say it's the first three, the venture, entrepreneurs, and corporations. That's what we're doing with the studio. Where that intersects, we're trying to create some great activity for a mining partner. Our platform seems to work when it comes to building collaborations between startup and startup, or startup and corporation. And so Jump Bike was acquired by Uber last year for $250 million. That was a collaboration between Jump, the city, and Uber. Within was acquired by Autodesk, another collaboration between Autodesk and Within. We brought Autodesk to New Lab. They engaged a bunch of companies, ended up partnering with Within, and then ended up acquiring them. Carmera did a pilot in New York City, which then led to a $20 million investment round with Google Ventures. And then Launcher, a serial entrepreneur, came to New Lab, accessed our prototyping facilities, our network, and built the largest 3D printed engine in the world, and is now core to their satellite launching system. So how are we going to apply this for mining? So Prospect Mining is a multi-year partnership with Vimsen. It's going to go in 12-month program cycles. And it's going to be a combination of recruiting startups and doing a lot of research about the space. Not really reteaching mining, because we have plenty of experts there, but really figuring out what are the emerging technologies that are gaining investment that can be applied to mining, right? So we're going to do that researching, that sourcing convergence, convene a lot of talent in the space in New York at one point, and then really build projects that can work towards piloting. So build these teams, recruit the startups, put experts around them, and get them into the pilots with Vimsen or their partner sites. And so we start with defining the challenges. This is, the scope can be really wide, and in the first year, candidly, we are starting wide, but I can see ourselves kind of doing more focused sort of challenge areas in year 2 of this, but we're just starting really wide. So we're trying to really access the entire mining value chain. We're seeing already a lot of investment in technologies that are relevant to every part of that. And so it's interesting, we'll have to figure out, which projects we end up pursuing based on, what's the near-term versus long-term opportunity for Vimsen and for the mining industry. And so we're starting now with doing a lot of diligence in the space, really figuring out which challenges we should go after, what are the actual specific kind of problem statements within those challenges, where on the mining value chain do we want to focus our efforts. So we're sort of in the sourcing phase for that right now. On December 11th, there's going to be our first summit in New York, and you can find more information on the website. This will be a combination of mining industry experts, investors, venture partners, and tech entrepreneurs coming together for a meeting kind of like this. We'll have a few open panels, but the afternoon will really be about these facilitated sessions. So we're going to have design thinking experts that are from the mining industry, working with a group of tech entrepreneurs and mining experts to really dig in and figure out, okay, what does a roadmap look like for implementing sensors for workforce safety? What does a roadmap look like for implementing a genomics platform for mineral extraction? How do you take bacteria and apply it to waste remediation? And, yep. So we have folks that have been essentially strategy consultants for the mining industry that are joining, and that, like IDEO, ex-IDEO people that work as independent consultants, people from Deloitte, for example, folks that have done this for oil and gas but not mining, so adjacent fields like that. Yeah, and that selection for the event isn't just the ones that we're going to work with going forward. It's just a subset of those because there's only so many people we can bring in the room. But what we're going to present to Vimsen is basically a strategy for each of these projects. So it's not just, hey, you should do something in AR. It's like, this is what a roadmap would look like to implement AR for this part of your operations. And this is the team that we think can do it, right? And that will be the project, one of the projects we pursue in the studio. And so for later stage companies that already have product in market, this is a very quick exercise, right? They might say, okay, well, I just need to add a few features and I'm ready to go into pilot. For earlier stage companies or people working in platforms that are adjacent to mining, they might say, okay, well, I need some prototyping effort first. And so part of the fees we get from Vimsen will go towards supporting the startup in doing that prototyping. And so we imagine that the prototyping rapidly would take different timescales, and so people will get into pilots at different times as well. But the idea being is that we're being intentional in how we grow these businesses. We're not trying to do just a bunch of networking. We're really trying to get them to help them build towards achieving this pilot and the Vimsen sites. At the end of the day, the pilots, I think, are really important. I have personal experience in trying to get startups to get into the mining industry myself, and it really fell short at the pilot almost every time. And I heard discussion about that today as well from the mining side, talking about how they have internal POCs that fall short because they can't get into pilots within their own organization for various reasons. And so we do have the commitment from Vimsen at the leadership level to do pilots and do several of them depending on the success of the projects. We've got their expertise plus external experts that want to join to help build the KPIs to develop these projects to get them into pilot. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're a later stage company or early stage, you can do what you do best, which is build a business, build the technology, and if you achieve certain goals, you're going to get into a pilot with a mining partner. And having that, I think, shrinks the enterprise sales cycle for the startup, which is great. It increases our chance of success for the project and allows us to be investors in that company if they do get traction in the pilot, right? And what Vincent's saying, well, this is great. New Lab is helping source all this from around the world, and I just have to put my expertise at certain times, and these startups will build things towards what's important to my industry, right? At the end of the day, we're driving investment. And so what does New Lab get out of it, and what does Vincent get out of it? We don't take any equity from startups participating in the studio. We want to invest in them if they get traction. We will be there to support the companies when they do get traction. So if you're Vincent, you're putting in time, that startup will not fail at the pilot because we're going to invest in that company. And so we're really trying to drive be a catalyst, not just in terms of knowledge and sourcing, but also driving investment into the mining industry, what's already prevalent in the tech industry in the United States. Plenty of venture capital dollars going into tech. Is it going into tech for mining? You can argue yes or no for that. And so we're trying to expand the scope of investment that will come to this industry. So these outcomes were actually written before I came here, but I can actually kind of flip them a little bit based on what I've been hearing in the panels. And so what are the outcomes of the studio? One is bringing together frontier tech and really in an entrepreneurship way to address these challenges. And so it speaks to attracting talent, right? There's a lot of discussions on can we attract the right tech talent to work in the mining industry? We think if you incentivize them as entrepreneurs, the answer is yes. And we've already seen that. Some really great reactions to the program in terms of applications, and not just folks that have been trying to get into the mining industry already, but ones that are adjacent. I've got this great robotics platform. I know it works for automotive. I'd love to try it out in mining if there's a process for that. Like, these are the types of reactions we're getting. We talk about, there was a panel this morning about collaboration. So this studio, the way it's built, the fact that New Lab is not trying to own any of the product ourselves, we're not trying to become a supplier for mining, makes us quite neutral, even though we are a private business. Vincent themselves know they're not going to be the biggest mine in the world. They would love to innovate the entire industry, right? And so they'd love to partner with other mines, other suppliers to the industry. There's room for everyone to sort of collaborate within this hub because everyone's sort of sourcing from the same pools, but can take on different projects that benefit them and also can gives them investment opportunities as well. And so establishing partnerships is very important. I've had great conversations here about that. At the end of the day, it's really validating technologies that will work in mining. And so it's not just testing something out and hope for the best. We're being very intentional in how we drive the prototyping and the piloting to really validate within what is a very complicated, as we all know, sort of operating environment and space in mining. At the end, and finally, like, we're not trying to take value and run away. The fact that Vincent is putting in their expertise and time, they can capture that value back by investing in the thing that they're de-risking in the program. And so by validating and de-risking these startups as they work towards mining, makes them better investments, right? And so as a partner, Vincent has a right to invest in those companies, and so does New Lab and anyone else that partners with us. So we find it to be sort of like a triple bottom line when it comes to value creation in the studio. This is the timeline for the first 12 months. We're within an open call now for participants. That's participants mostly about startups, but we are trying to talk to partners on the mining side that want to come partner with us. We have our summit December 11th. If you're interested in joining that, please let me know. And you can also find information on the site. The engage phase is when we kick off the prototyping and project sort of development. Again, later stage companies may not need all that time and can go into pilots right away. Others might need the full 6 months to really get up to speed and get into a pilot. We'll have a demo day sometime next summer to sort of demonstrate this is what's happening in the program. These are the pilots we're launching with Vincent. And the pilots will launch anytime between February and that summer, again, based on the agility and the maturity of the tech startup that's involved. As I said, we're currently looking at the entire mining value chain, but candidly speaking, who knows how that's going to look in a year from now. We might decide, you know what, we should just focus on production, right? Focusing on the entire chain is just too much. We're not getting enough of quality. We're getting too much quantity. We don't know yet. But for now, Vincent and New Lab want to really focus on the entire value chain. And so far, we are seeing a lot of investment opportunities in tech that can be applied to all of these. So it's interesting. Lots of adjacent work happening that's relevant to all four of these buckets. Application areas are ones I think you all are aware of. We're seeing the same thing around sustainability and closed loop production, mineral discovery and extraction, anything to do with energy efficiency or water. Lots of tech that's being applied in mining, lots of tech being developed that hasn't been applied in mining. So this is pretty exciting. Plenty of data and logistics optimization that we've seen here, and so quite familiar with that. In the tech areas, tons of investment in these spaces in the United States. And again, I'll keep repeating it. Some have thought about mining. Others have said, I have no way of getting into that industry, so I'm not going to bother. So we've got great computer vision companies approaching us. How do you image minerals? How do you image worker movement and asset movement within a mining site? Lots of synthetic biology and life sciences development. Huge investments in the space in the United States for food waste remediation or just processing organics. Lots of work in applying that to metals and minerals. And so we're seeing a lot of incredible startups that want to kind of help innovate that in mining. Got a great team, and so we're really invested in this. We've got the entire Vincent leadership team that's involved, and so it's the family who are also the chairman and directors, as well as our CTO, and on the New Lab side, it's our leadership team. This is our biggest corporate innovation program. We're launching ones in railroad as well as shipping and logistics, but this mining one is by far the biggest in terms of commitment from the partner. It's a multi-year commitment, really trying to go after the entire industry and source startups from around the world. Great program team, and exciting also is that we're building a great set of advisors. We've got a Columbia professor that develops organisms for mining remediation. We've got investors in mining, owners of other types of mines. Robbie Stancil is the design thinking consultant I mentioned for mining. And then we've got the chairman of Honeybee Robotics, so bringing that tech expertise to the advisor cohort. And this is going to be growing as well. That's it. Just 2 minutes short, so thanks for coming and questions. Yep. Yeah, so companies do not have to relocate to New York, but they can if they can take advantage of the New Lab's physical resources on site, and if they want to be in New York because it's a great place to meet investors, right? So we'll provide space if that's, but they don't have to be there. So it'll be a lot of virtual sort of obviously engagement. Might be some touch points where we have to travel and see each other, but it's really about designing what does the path look like to get to a pilot, and if it makes sense for your business, then I think we'll figure out a way to work with the startup at the end of the day. The key is not to take the startup too far off path to what they're trying to do, right? And so that's the incentive. We're saying, well, the industry is big enough. This is not changing your platform too much. It's not such a big pivot. We should work together.
Going back to that design,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't those resources be best used with the mining company themselves so it's very, very clear what they're looking for?
Yes, I think it's, well, they're definitely going to be involved. For them, what they're saying is, I don't feel like building up this capacity ourselves. And I appreciate someone who's worked with other mining partners and bring in some external thinking. And so we pay them as a consultant to come and show up. And so you can imagine this design thinking consultant, the mining partner, and the tech entrepreneurs in a room together, ideating on waste remediation, right? So we just did this with a shipping company around port congestion. So we had a couple of data analytics companies. We had a design thinking expert who worked at oil and gas, same problem, and literally posted notes and drawing out maps. And we picked basically 2 projects came out of that, the shipping company is going to fund at New Lab. So what we've noticed is like if you have early stage startups or any startups that haven't been in mining or even have been in mining, and you leave them alone with that large enterprise, the message can get lost sometimes, right? Some are able to do it. You're an example of that, but some just can't. They can't, so we need that sort of external kind of thread that ties them together.
Probably so they have other also usual plans or usual manufacturing. They are really good, right? So they're not just in mining. So you have synergy with the other.
Totally, yeah.
That they actually, or as a
That's exactly right. And if you think about it, there's some technologies that are only applicable to iron ore and not. And maybe so if you have a technology that's good for copper but not for iron, they've got partners they can go to for that. There's some that transcend, that go across the industry. And you're right, they're adjacent to other manufacturing industries as well. So this is when they put on their investor hat and they say, this is great. I'd love to, like, you can't pilot at my iron ore site, but I know this other partner that you should pilot at. And by the way, I want to invest in you when you do that, right? That's the value. Thank you.